late 1820s, Charleston, South Carolina was in a recession. The local merchants decided they needed a railroad to connect Charleston to the thriving inland markets. In October 1830, the engine arrived and was named the best friend of Charleston. It was the first steam locomotive in the United States to make regularly scheduled passenger service. The 6-mile trip was described by the local newspapers. We flew on the wings of wind at speeds of 15 to 25 miles per hour, annihilating time and space, leaving all the world behind. Like a live rocket, scattering sparks and flames on either side, hop, step, and jump. And we landed safely before any of us had time to determine whether or not it was prudent to be scared. In 1830, the total mileage of U.S. railroads was 23 miles. The best friend returned economic prosperity to Charleston and was the beginning of railroad passenger service in America. The best friend was indeed the little engine that did. The John Bull steam locomotive ran the rails for the Camden and Amboy Railroad of New Jersey for 35 years, between 1833 and 1866. The 10-ton steam locomotive, built in England, was delivered to the Philadelphia docks in pieces. After assembling and a test run, modifications were made. The boiler dome was altered to enhance performance, and a front axle, 2 wheels, plus a cow catcher were added. Also added was a bell and headlight, making it the first locomotive to have a bell, headlight, and cow catcher. In 1871, the Pennsylvania Railroad purchased the CNA, refurbished the John Bull, and put it on display until 1884, when it became the Smithsonian Institution's first major industrial exhibit. In 1981, the Smithsonian Institution fired up the John Bull, and it became the oldest operating steam locomotive in the world. The DeWitt Clinton, named after the governor of New York, was the first steam locomotive to operate in the state of New York. It began operations in 1831 for the Mohawk and Hudson Railroad. The DeWitt Clinton's first run was a 16-mile journey from Albany to Schenectady. Its passenger cars were yellow stagecoaches fitted with railroad trucks. The passengers sat either inside or outdoors on rumble seats. A grand celebration was planned to mark the operating of the steam line on August 9, 1831. A big crowd gathered. The conductor blew the horn. The engine leaped forward and the crowd burst into cheers. But the leap forward was with such great force that all the passengers tumbled backwards out of their seats and almost fell off the train. But the excitement was just beginning. Later, when the train stopped for water, the brakes worked too well. The passengers were thrown out of their seats, forward this time. But things settled down after that shaky start. The Mohawk and Hudson Railroad, which later became part of the New York Central system, utilized the DeWitt Clinton for 14 years. Only once, during a heavy snow in 1832, did the sturdy little locomotive fail to complete its run. The 040 Stourbridge Lion was the first steam locomotive to operate in the United States. The locomotive was manufactured in Stourbridge, England, and was purchased by the Delaware and Hudson Railroad to carry coal from Pennsylvania to New York. The lion part of this name came from the proud lion's head painted on the boiler front. The Lion's first run was set for August 8, 1829, in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. A big crowd gathered, but convinced the Lion would never work and the noisy contraption might kill anyone who rode on it, no one volunteered for the ride. So amidst the jeers and laughter, Horatio Allen, the brave engineer, mounted the hissing Lion. The jeers quickly turned to cheers as the Stourbridge Lion charged forward, crossed a trestle bridge, and disappeared. Many thought it would not return, but soon, with the courageous Allen still at the throttle and riding backwards, triumphantly back to Honesdale. The crowd clapped and shouted, but the Lion's reign was short-lived. At 7 tons, it proved too heavy for the track, and a lighter locomotive was designed to replace it. The Lion was put in storage, never to roar again. These 4 primitive locomotives were the beginning of a travel revolution and paved the way for the great passenger trains that pounded the rails over the next 100 years.
The MPC reign of the modern era saw the production of many Lionel trains built similarly to post-war versions. Several parts between the two eras are interchangeable. In some cases, post-war components are better than the MPC counterparts. For instance, the armatures of the post-war era are more sturdy with noise-reducing elements. By comparison, the MPC armature is rather flimsy. It works well enough to drive the locomotive, but it's noisy and the heat generated by the operation can melt the plastic section of the commutator. Has this ever happened to you? Some will even argue that the overall performance of a motor is better with a post-war armature. Depending on the AC motor, a post-war armature can often be used to replace an MPC armature. Some armatures are easier to remove from a motor than others. An easy armature to replace is used for Alcos, Jeeps, and switchers. It's a simple matter of removing the brush plate, lifting out the MPC armature, and dropping in a post-war armature. Another change MPC made was using nylon gears. It can be argued that nylon gears are quieter, but they're not as sturdy as metal gears. There are a few diesel locomotives where the truck of a motor truck can be replaced with a post-war version. Not only does this replace nylon gears with metal gears, but it replaces tire traction with magnet traction. We'll use this ELC rectifier to demonstrate how easy this is. The part for this locomotive is listed as number 2328-187 Basic Power Truck. The motor truck of the locomotive is removed without having to pull off the cab. A mounting screw in the underside of the truck is removed. Then the truck is carefully pulled away. Take care not to push the motor into the locomotive or you'll have to pull off the shell to get to it. Next, remove the mounting screw for the truck side assembly. Now what you have left is the MPC version of the basic power truck. Place the truck side assembly over the post-war basic power truck and fasten the screw. Now carefully mount the truck to the motor. Again, taking care not to push the motor into the locomotive. After you fasten the screw, you're done. Now this affordable modern era locomotive, whose post-war older brother is worth 4 times as much, is just as good a runner.
Doug Spittler moved 4 times before he built the house ideal for his family and his trains. Before he started building, Doug's wife, Linda, made a suggestion.
When we got married and we found out we were going to build a house, she says, build it big enough that you can take your trains out of the boxes and put them up. She didn't realize she opened up a can of worms.
Doug must have had quite a few boxes because his train room, measuring 28 by 48 feet, is filled. He started building this layout 12 years ago. Doug wanted to create something reminiscent of the town he grew up in.
I lived in North Vernon, Indiana at the time. That was a very popular railroad town, very active. My dad worked as a telegrapher for the B&O Railroad. That sparked a lot of interest in trains as well. This is just Doug's imagination, gone wild.
Doug started out with traditional Lionel 031 track, but switched to Gargraves.
I started out with Lionel track, but I did not like 3-tie, railroad tie sections. Gargraves fit my desire a lot better. It's basically oval with a bunch of curves in it and a lot of switches. The upper layer has a crossover in it, and I can turn trains around on it and what have you. One of the things that I really like about this particular layout, I can take any train on any level, on any track, and never lay my hand on it to move it. In real life, you don't see some big monster hand coming over and lifting a car off the track to put another car on, so it's more realistic that way. I operate it with 1 modern age Lionel ZW, 2 post-war V transformers, 1 indoor-outdoor landscape lighting transformer. When Command came in, I really started making my trains bigger. I was really getting into it because it was what I wanted to do with my trains. I didn't want to stand at the transformer and have to control them all the time. I wanted to walk around the room and do different things.
Doug uses both Command Control and Legacy. He does not use Legacy to its full potential.
I bought the Legacy because I like the idea that that train is supposedly running 65 scale miles per hour. I like that. Now, as far as all the advanced features in the Legacy system, I've really not explored them any. I know there's different routes I can do. I can run switching operations or run my switch motors and stuff with them. But I choose not to do that because that's getting a lot of numbers in my little brain, having to remember.
Today, Doug is running mostly Lionel. There's a Hudson heading a long line of mixed freights. A B&O F3 ABA with passenger cars. An ABA Atlantic Coastline F3 with matching aluminum passenger cars. Twin CSX-9s. A pair of B&O GP9s. A C&O mallet pulling a long line of ore cars. The B&O Blue Pacific passenger train is by K-Line.